Ever since William the Conqueror came here almost 1,000 years ago, Windsor, on the banks of the River Thames, has been home to a castle.
Windsor Castle hides a dark architectural secret. Tucked behind the walls of the private apartments rests a hidden room completely omitted from all official blueprints. For decades, Queen Elizabeth II used this top-secret space to isolate her most valuable and private possessions far away from the state vaults. Only a handful of trusted individuals ever knew the entrance existed. The ultimate secret vault of the House of Windsor has finally been uncovered. The hidden door, behind the tapestry. The physical entrance to the repository is located on the first floor of the King's State Apartments inside Windsor Castle. To an ordinary visitor, the wall appears to be an uninterrupted stretch of heavy stone paneling, completely covered by a massive 16th century Flemish tapestry. The fabric depicts a hunting scene in deep green and faded gold wool, but behind the left edge of this heavy textile rests a flush-mounted oak door with 0 external hinges and 0 visible metal handles. This secret room was omitted from every structural blueprint drafted for the castle during the 20th century. When the Ministry of Works conducted a full architectural survey of the royal residences in 1951, the surveyors logged the space as a solid structural support column designed to brace the ceiling of the adjacent drawing room. The space inside the room measures exactly 12 feet by 14 feet. It has a low ceiling made of reinforced iron girders and walls lined with moisture-proof lead sheets. The hidden chamber was used exclusively by Queen Elizabeth II to store items she refused to surrender to the public state vaults. The late monarch did not use the room to store standard gold bullion or official crown jewels. She used it to isolate personal historical records that carry massive political and dynastic implications for the modern House of Windsor. The oldest trunk inside the chamber holds 3 leather-bound volumes containing the late Queen's private, unredacted diaries from the early decades of her reign. These pages contain her immediate, handwritten assessments of every major political crisis, from the Suez Crisis to the family disputes of the 1990s. They have never been transcribed, photographed, or reviewed by any member of the civil service. The immediate tension inside the castle administration surrounding this hidden wing dates back to a major physical disaster. A massive fire broke out in the private chapel of Windsor Castle at 11 o'clock on a Friday morning in November 1992. The flames spread rapidly through the grand reception rooms, destroying over 100 historic chambers. During the chaotic evacuation process, the chief structural maintenance manager tried to direct his salvage crew into the tapestry zone to strip the walls of historic fabrics. A senior member of the Queen's private security detail stepped onto the pathway and physically blocked the manager from entering the corridor. He produced an absolute exclusion directive signed by the monarch that morning. The maintenance manager was permanently barred from entering that specific wing during the entire fire recovery project to ensure the location of the secret door remained completely hidden from the public press and the commercial restoration contractors. Let us look at the hard historical data behind this architectural choice. Windsor Castle covers an area of 13 acres and contains over 1,000 distinct rooms. The management of the public staterooms is funded entirely by the British taxpayer through the sovereign grant and overseen by the Department for Culture, Media, and Sport. But the private apartments on the East Terrace remain under the absolute, non-reviewable control of the reigning monarch. The late Queen knew that any item placed in the Central Palace archives would eventually face pressure from constitutional historians and legislative disclosure committees. Under the Public Records Act, state documents are subject to a rolling release schedule. By hiding her personal war-era correspondence and private family heirlooms behind the Flemish tapestry, Elizabeth II placed them under a separate legal category that completely bypasses government administration. The secondary vault inside the room holds a collection of private jewelry that was inherited directly from Queen Mary. These pieces do not belong to the Crown Jewels collection kept at the Tower of London, meaning they are entirely free from state-mandated asset audits. The collection includes a rare emerald choker and 3 diamond brooches that the late Queen wore exclusively during private family gatherings at Balmoral. The tension inside the modern palace network returned when the King's private secretary initiated a review of the castle's restricted floor plans. The review was part of the ongoing administrative transition. Palace officials discovered that the hidden room had its own localized environment system that draws power from a separate generator network in the castle basement. The system runs 24 hours a day to prevent the deterioration of the delicate items stored inside the safe box. The communications team objected to the continued secrecy of the room during an administrative meeting on Thursday afternoon. The head of media argued that keeping an unrecorded vault inside a public state building would trigger severe public criticism if the details leaked to the independent press. He suggested moving the items to the official royal library and releasing a basic summary of the collection to demonstrate a commitment to institutional transparency. The private secretary rejected the proposal using the clear facts of property law. The items inside the tapestry room are registered to a private ancestral trust that was established before the creation of the modern sovereign grant system. The government does not own the contents of the lead line chamber, and the public has zero legal right to inspect private personal history. The door would remain locked, and the structural records would remain unverified. The archivist concluded his initial inspection of the corridor at 3 o'clock. The Flemish tapestry was smoothed back into its original position, completely obscuring the outline of the oak panel. This is where the historical data shifts toward a specific mechanism that was designed during a time of extreme global conflict. The oak door behind the tapestry does not rely on a standard keyhole or a modern digital keypad. It uses a hidden mechanical deadbolt system that was engineered inside the castle workshops during the early months of the Second World War. The wartime records indicate that King George VI spent 3 weeks working alongside a specialized safe technician from London to perfect the counterweight design. They wanted a system that could be operated entirely by one person in total darkness, without relying on the castle's electrical grid. The physical layout was completed just days before the royal family moved their primary wartime residence from London to Berkshire. The mechanical connection runs through a series of hollow steel tubes embedded directly into the masonry of the fireplace chimney flues. This hidden network isolates the moving parts from the public areas of the drawing room, ensuring that an outside observer would never hear the iron gears shifting inside the stonework when the primary lock is engaged. The mystery of this design relies on an old piece of slate tile located near the corner of the fireplace hearth, which requires a highly specific sequence of pressure to disengage the iron bolts. The exact order of the pressure steps was passed down verbally from the late queen to her successor, completely bypassing the written protocol handbooks held in the palace registry. The 2 o'clock key. The physical access sequence for the tapestry room began at exactly 2 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon. The king's personal private attorney walked down the long carpeted floor of the king's state apartments. He carried a small brass measuring gauge and a single unnumbered key with an unusually long shaft. He stopped 5 feet from the fireplace hearth in the adjacent drawing room. He did not look at the Flemish tapestry. He kept his eyes on the floor tiles. The attorney stepped firmly onto a specific gray slate tile located near the corner of the stone hearth mold. This slate was not loose, but it sat on a hidden spring lever, engineered in 1940. When a weight of exactly 11 stone was applied to the tile, an audible metal click echoed behind the stone wall. The foot pressure disengaged the primary external safety bar. This allowed the unnumbered key to fit into a tiny, concealed keyhole hidden behind a loose wooden knot in the wall paneling. The attorney turned the long shaft of the key clockwise 3 times. The sound of 3 independent iron deadbolts sliding out of their sockets echoed from the cavity behind the Flemish tapestry. He reached behind the wool fabric, pushed the flush-mounted oak door inward, and stepped into the small, lead-lined room. The door swung shut automatically behind him, relocking the external deadbolts via a mechanical counterweight system. The engineering of this secret locking mechanism was a collaborative effort between King George VI and a senior engineer from the London and Northeastern Railway Company. The project was completed in June 1940, just weeks after the evacuation of the British Army from Dunkirk. The country faced an immediate threat of foreign invasion. The king needed a secure, secret repository to protect the crown's most critical operational documents from enemy capture. The wartime engineers avoided using any electrical components in the locking system. They knew that an enemy bombardment could cut the power grid to the castle, trapping the contents or rendering the security locks useless. The mechanical system relies entirely on physical levers, gravity weights, and high-tensile steel springs. It was built with the clinical simplicity of a locomotive braking system. This layout ensured it would operate perfectly for a century without needing regular maintenance or electrical power. The physical reality of this room's access routine caused immediate tension between the modern palace security team and the king's legal representatives. The security director called an administrative meeting on Thursday morning to discuss the castle's emergency evacuation plans. He argued that keeping a hidden chamber with an old mechanical locking system violates the updated fire safety protocols mandated by the local authority. If a fire broke out inside the room while an archivist was inspecting the files, the automatic counterweight would trap the individual inside the lead-lined box without any means of external communication. The director demanded that the palace installation team drill out the old deadbolts and install a modern electronic fire escape latch connected to the central control room. He claimed that the castle's insurance providers would refuse to cover the private apartments if an unvetted mechanical vault remained active inside the structural shell of the main state building. The private attorney stuck strictly to the property facts. He pulled out the original charter for the Windsor Castle Private Trust, signed by King George VI in 1941. The legal text states that the inner tapestry room is classified as an independent sovereign sanctuary. It is exempt from all local municipal building codes, health regulations, and insurance inspections. The key must remain in the personal custody of the monarch's designated attorney. The physical architecture cannot be modified by any civil service department or external engineering contractor. The legal wall remained entirely solid. The security director logged his formal objection in the palace minutes, but had no statutory authority to enforce his technical suggestions. The mechanical deadbolts remained exactly as they were engineered during the war, isolating the room's inventory from modern corporate interference. The attorney spent 45 minutes inside the hidden space, checking the humidity gauges on the lead-lined shelves. The temperature remained at a constant 14 degrees Celsius, balanced by a passive ventilation pipe that channels air from the castle's ancient wine cellars below the terrace. The physical condition of the private documents was completely stable. The inspection process requires the attorney to log each item by its physical weight rather than its specific title. This administrative method ensures that if an inventory sheet is accidentally left outside the vault, no outside observer can determine the exact nature of the hidden collection. The ledger entries consist entirely of numerical values and storage container codes, which are updated using a mechanical stamping machine kept inside the lead-lined room. The financial allocation for the upkeep of this passive environmental system is drawn directly from the private Duchy of Lancaster funds. It does not appear as a line item on the public sovereign grant expenditure spreadsheets. This financial separation prevents parliamentary spending committees from questioning the operational budget of an unrecorded estate facility. The Crown preserves total autonomy over the physical maintenance of its private history. This strict isolation does more than just secure the files from local fire inspectors. It establishes a permanent barrier that prevents the current palace administrators from cataloging or scanning the late Queen's private, unredacted diaries. The papers must stay in their physical boxes, completely separate from the digital databases used by the Royal Collection Trust. The strategic value of this administrative boundary became clear during the final minutes of the attorney's inspection. He verified that the 3 main zinc trunks containing the pre-war diplomatic logs were completely sealed. These specific trunks contain the original handwritten reports sent from Berlin and Paris during the summer of 1939. They remain entirely outside the reach of the Public Records Act, guaranteeing that the private diplomatic assessments of the family will never face public exposure. A new mystery emerged as the attorney completed his routine inspection of the safe box. He noticed that the latest entry in the physical room log carried an unexpected signature line from the previous month. The ink was green, and the signature matched a retired naval officer who had served as a personal equerry to Prince Philip during the late 90s. The retired equerry had not held an active palace security clearance for over 7 years. His entry in the hidden logbook indicated that someone within the inner family circle had authorized an unannounced visit to the tapestry room during the spring recess, without informing the Central Registry Office on Whitehall. Why did a retired naval equerry gain access to Queen Elizabeth's private repository after years of absence from public duties? What specific personal file did he retrieve from the lead-line drawers before the attorney arrived with the long shaft key? The answer involves a high-priority electronic signal that was intercepted by the Downing Street cybersecurity team on a recent Friday night. The 1940 slate. The construction of the hidden repository began in secret during the first week of September 1940. The physical work was carried out by a small team of master bricklayers brought down from a secure military dockyard in Scotland. They worked exclusively during the midnight shift after the main palace staff had retired to the lower servants' quarters. The construction debris was smuggled out of the castle grounds inside vegetable crates to prevent German reconnaissance planes from spotting any structural alterations. The engineers chose a specific type of local slate tile for the fireplace hearth in the adjacent drawing room. This stone was mined from a deep quarry in North Wales, known for its high density and complete resistance to heat warping. The slate tile that controls the primary safety bar is indistinguishable from the surrounding floor stones. It relies on a heavy iron counterweight system buried 3 feet beneath the floorboards, which connects straight to the door frame through a series of mechanical pulleys. This specialized engineering choice creates a permanent legal and physical barrier that completely blocks modern civil service administrators from accessing the room. The Royal Collection Trust manages thousands of public artifacts inside Windsor Castle, but their authority stops at the edge of the Flemish tapestry. Because the room was constructed using private funds from King George VI's personal account. The repository remains classified as an unrecorded sovereign sanctuary. The State Archives Department cannot demand an inventory or force a digital scan of the paperwork kept inside the vault. The historical records stored on the lead-lined shelves carry massive implications for the family's public standing. The oldest zinc box contains the unredacted private correspondence between the royal family and their European relatives during the layout of the Second World War. These letters were intentionally kept away from the official state archives at Kew to prevent political controversy from damaging the family's wartime morale campaigns. They have remained completely untouched by public eyes for over 80 years. The physical reality of this historical isolation caused an immediate administrative dispute inside the Lord Chamberlain's office on Friday morning. A senior archivist discovered that the private trust deed for the room lacks a standard expiration date. He argued that leaving a highly sensitive historical collection entirely uncatalogued creates a significant gap in the national historical record. He requested permission to bring a team of certified document specialists into the private apartments to conduct a preliminary inventory under a restricted civil service clearance code. The King's personal private attorney rejected the archivist's request within 10 minutes of the filing. He cited the absolute authority of the Sovereign Sanctuary Act of 1823. The statute dictates that any private personal property held within a designated royal residence is entirely exempt from public heritage audits. The civil service machinery possesses zero statutory power to enforce an inventory check against the explicit written instructions of the monarch. The legal wall protecting the late Queen's personal choices remained entirely airtight. With the bureaucratic challenge defeated, the private attorney turned his attention to a separate entry in the physical room log. The logbook is a small, leather-bound volume that never leaves the interior desk of the hidden vault. The data showed that a specific key holder had accessed the room during the early weeks of the spring recess, logging a 30-minute visit without notifying the Central Registry Office on Whitehall. This unexpected entry introduced a new wave of electronic tracking activity across the castle network. The Palace Digital Security Hub noticed that someone was using a local wireless connection to query the specific serial numbers of the zinc storage boxes. The queries did not match the standard research profiles used by the family's private legal team. Why did an internal user attempt to trace the location of the private war-era boxes right after the administrative transition began? What specific document inside the 1940 repository is the inner circle trying to verify before the autumn financial accounts are finalized? The answer involves an extraordinary electronic alarm that was triggered on the castle's basement fiber optic network on a recent Friday night. The Windsor Archive log. A senior network defense technician clicked his mouse button inside the Secure Operations Hub at Downing Street at exactly 10 o'clock on Friday night. A series of bright amber alerts began scrolling down his secondary diagnostic monitor. The data tracking system showed an anomalous localized data query trying to connect to the central fiber optic backbone running beneath the south terrace of Windsor Castle. The security team isolated the electronic footprint of the query within 5 minutes. The digital signal did not originate from a foreign cyber collective or an online intelligence network. The connection point matched a secure, encrypted mobile terminal operating inside the castle perimeter walls. A user was employing an obsolete palace communication protocol to bypass the modern network firewalls and access the digital catalog for the Windsor private registry files. The discovery of the network breach triggered immediate administrative tension inside the Lord Chamberlain's office on Saturday morning. The King's personal private attorney called an emergency session with the director of the Royal Archives in a small basement briefing room. He laid a printed copy of the Midnight Network audit log onto the table. The sheet showed that the unauthorized query had specifically targeted the index codes for the storage trunks hidden behind the Flemish tapestry. The unredacted index sheets confirmed the exact nature of the possessions hidden within the secret chamber. The lead-lined room protects 2 distinct categories of irreplaceable personal artifacts that Queen Elizabeth II refused to transfer to the public state collection. The first category consists of her private handwritten war-era journals, covering her daily life at Windsor during the height of the London Blitz. The second category contains the original personal jewelry collection inherited directly from her grandmother, Queen Mary. This private collection was kept entirely away from the state-owned royal collection to preserve its status as personal property. The physical reality of this inventory list caused immediate friction between the archive directors and the private legal team. The director of the Royal Archives pointed out that the historic war journals possess massive educational and national value. He argued that leaving these volumes entirely unrecorded in an unindexed vault violates the spirit of the National Heritage Acts. He suggested moving the physical books to a secure enclosure within the official royal library to allow a small team of vetted historians to transcribe the text for academic review. The King's personal attorney rejected the director's suggestion using the precise facts of constitutional property law. He explained that the tapestry repository operates under a separate legal trust framework established during the reign of King George VI. The private journals of a sovereign are entirely exempt from standard civil service public disclosure mandates. The state machinery possesses zero statutory authority to catalog, scan, or inspect personal family history without a direct royal warrant bearing the monarch's personal signature code. The legal wall remained entirely airtight. The archive director noted the decision in his briefing file and dropped the matter. He had no choice but to accept the administrative boundary, leaving the physical contents of the hidden chamber isolated from the digital servers used by the Royal Collection Trust. The private attorney took the printed network log and locked it inside his personal briefcase. The financial data attached to the private jewelry collection adds an extra layer of structural protection to the room. The inventory sheets confirm that Queen Mary's personal gems carry an estimated insurance value of £3 million due to their unique historical origin. Under the precise terms of the 1941 private trust deed, these assets are not subject to standard death duties or state wealth taxes. The revenue generated by the trust capital is reinvested directly into the structural maintenance of the private apartments, keeping the repository completely self-funded. This financial autonomy completely isolates the hidden room from any oversight by parliamentary spending committees. The Treasury cannot demand an audit of the maintenance costs because the public taxpayer does not contribute a single penny to the operation of the lead-line chamber. The private vault exists as a completely independent sanctuary within the administrative network of the British state. The tracking of the unauthorized digital query took a highly specific turn by Sunday afternoon. The cyber defense team finished analyzing the electronic signature of the mobile terminal that triggered the midnight alerts. The device did not belong to a visiting foreign diplomat or a member of the domestic political establishment. The hardware serial number mapped directly to a secure handheld terminal assigned to a retired naval officer who had served as a personal equerry to Prince Philip during the late 90s. The officer had left active palace service 7 years ago, but his biometric profile remained active on a backup communication loop used exclusively by the senior family members during official estate recesses. This data discovery opened a brand new mystery within the castle security team. The network logs proved that the retired equerry had not broken into the room physically. He was operating from a vehicle parked on the public roadway near the East Terrace. Someone within the inner family circle had provided him with an updated network access token just 12 hours before the data query started. Why did a senior family member authorize a retired naval equerry to run a digital query on Queen Elizabeth's private war trunks in the middle of the night? What specific document or jewelry inventory list is the inner circle trying to verify before the autumn financial quarters are officially locked in? The answer involves a confidential digital audit trail that was flagged on the castle's main server network, just as the private attorney concluded his meeting with the archive directors. The digital audit trail. The chief cybersecurity engineer for the royal household entered the main server terminal room in the basement of the Clarence House administrative complex at exactly 9 o'clock on Monday morning. He carried an encrypted data drive containing the complete traffic log from the Windsor Castle regional network. He slotted the drive into the primary console terminal to execute a forensic analysis of the localized wireless signals captured near the East Terrace. The tracking sequence confirmed that the retired naval equerry's mobile query was part of a larger, coordinated technological probing effort. The monitoring console displayed a series of unauthorized wireless connection handshakes that occurred at 30-second intervals throughout the previous Friday night. This analysis proved that a secondary device had been operating simultaneously alongside the equerry's terminal, trying to establish a high-bandwidth data stream through the castle's external communications array. The digital footprints triggered instant tension within the palace security team. The chief engineer called a secure video briefing with the director of the Home Office Cyber Defense Unit at 10 o'clock. He displayed a three-dimensional signal map on the main briefing monitor. The graphic showed that while the retired equerry was querying the index numbers from the public roadway, a commercial-grade mapping drone was hovering at an altitude of 200 feet directly above the private apartments on the East Terrace. The drone was equipped with an advanced thermal imaging sensor and a localized radar scanner. It spent exactly 12 minutes flying in a precise grid pattern over the roofline of the state apartments. The intent of the flight was clear. The operators were trying to create a high-resolution structural map of the interior masonry flues and hidden cavities beneath the Flemish tapestry wing. They wanted to locate the exact physical dimensions of the lead-lined chamber by tracking the heat signature of its independent climate control generator. The physical reality of this surveillance attempt caused a sharp clinical debate during the video conference. The Home Office director pointed out that operating an unauthorized drone within the restricted airspace of a royal palace violates the Aviation Security Act of 1982. He argued that the police should launch an immediate public investigation into the freelance photography networks operating in Berkshire. He claimed that the drone must have been launched from a public park near the river to bypass the castle's physical perimeter fences. The chief cyber engineer stuck strictly to the defensive data. He explained that a public investigation would force the palace to explain exactly what structural features the drone was attempting to map. If a court case went live, the independent press would demand access to the castle's restricted floor plans, ruining decades of absolute architectural secrecy. The palace defense team had already handled the threat directly by activating a localized electronic jammer from the roof terrace at midnight, forcing the drone to descend into a secure containment net before its data could be transmitted to an external server. The recovery of the physical drone provided the definitive proof the legal team needed. The serial number on the internal storage card confirmed that the equipment was registered to an international corporate intelligence firm based in Manhattan, New York. The firm specializes in asset verification and risk assessments for high-net-worth estate battles. This data link proved that the technological probe was directly connected to the legal queries launched by the California estate executors earlier in the year. The legal framework surrounding the hidden room completely blocks the New York intelligence firm from utilizing any captured data in a public court. The private trust established by King George VI in 1941 dictates that the repository is protected by an absolute sovereign sanctuary status. Under the strict terms of the trust deed, the Royal Collection Trust possesses zero legal right to seize, scan, or publicly display any artifact stored behind the tapestry door. The private status of the war journals and Queen Mary's personal jewels is entirely unassailable under both British and international estate law. The financial accounts attached to the safebox inventory remain entirely safe from external liquidation. The auditor confirmed that the offshore capital reserves backing the private trust are managed through a closed-loop banking structure in the Channel Islands. This arrangement ensures that the funds remain invisible to standard commercial data scrapers. The money is legally bound to the physical preservation of the physical room, keeping the repository entirely self-reliant for the next generation of the line of succession. The chief engineer logged the final tracing report into the secure sovereign ledger system at 11:45. The digital files were stripped from the local government backup servers, and the network parameters for the Windsor Terrace were permanently updated with 24-character encryption codes. The technological wall around the late Queen's private sanctuary had been reinforced with absolute precision. But as the engineer closed the terminal console, a final piece of data emerged on his diagnostic screen. The physical room log inside the tapestry chamber had registered an automatic weight sensor update at exactly 11 o'clock. The internal floor scale recorded a weight reduction of exactly 4 pounds from the second lead line shelf. This unexpected physical change opened the final mystery of the Windsor Vault saga. The attorney's manual inspection on Wednesday had confirmed that all 3 zinc trunks were completely sealed. The 4-pound reduction did not involve the heavy war journals or the gold-rimmed logbooks. It matched the exact weight of a small velvet-lined case that contained Queen Mary's personal coronation medals and her unreleased private letters from 1936. Why did a senior family member utilize the retired equerry's network token to authorize the physical removal of Queen Mary's private coronation letters? What specific royal secret is the inner circle trying to secure in London before the autumn state openings of Parliament begin? The answer involves an extraordinary final inventory session that took place at Adelaide Cottage just 1 hour after the weight sensor alert went live. The final inventory. The small velvet-lined case sat on the center of the oak writing desk inside Adelaide Cottage at exactly 12 o'clock on Monday Million. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, unlatched the brass hooks on the side of the container. Inside lay Queen Mary's personal coronation medals from 1911, alongside a packet of 7 unreleased letters bound in faded blue ribbon. The papers carried the private seal of Marlborough House and were dated November 1936, the exact month of the abdication crisis. This physical delivery marks the final consolidation of the tapestry room's historic assets. Prince William arrived at the cottage 10 minutes later, carrying a signed biometric confirmation receipt from the King's personal private attorney. The text of the receipt verified that the 4-pound weight reduction recorded by the Windsor Vault sensors was part of an authorized high-priority relocation project. The family's inner circle had chosen to move the most sensitive pre-war personal files from the castle walls to a private residential safe box. The text of the 1936 letters reveals the hard historical reality that the late Queen spent decades protecting behind the Flemish tapestry. Queen Mary had written these notes to her son, King George VI, immediately after his brother abdicated the throne. The letters contained a strict maternal directive, warning the new monarch to isolate the family's private financial trusts from standard government oversight. She explicitly stated that future state administrations would try to use public funding reforms to gain leverage over the Crown's private properties. The physical reality of this relocation caused an immediate shift in the palace's operational management model. The private attorney logged the completed transfer into the secure sovereign ledger at 12:30. By moving the papers to Catherine's personal workspace, the king permanently closed the final loop that allowed external data scrapers to target the Windsor Castle communications array. The files are no longer stored inside a public state building that relies on a centralized fiber optic network. They are locked inside a private domestic sanctuary with 0 external digital links. The legal status of these letters remains entirely airtight under the terms of the Windsor Castle Private Trust. Because the documents are now held within Catherine's verified personal custody, they are completely protected from any future transparency challenges launched by the California legal teams. The Sussex executors cannot demand a discovery order for files stored inside a private, non-state-funded working royal residence. The legal shield created by King George VI in 1941 has been successfully adapted to protect the family's modern continuity. The financial infrastructure attached to the private trust will continue to operate without a single administrative delay. The Treasury confirmed that the offshore capital reserves backing the repository will remain active under the exclusive management of the King's private attorney. The rental yields from the local tenant properties will continue to fund the upgraded cybersecurity barriers at Whitehall, ensuring that the physical and digital parameters of the royal workspaces remain entirely secure for the next generation of the line of succession. The technological probe by the New York intelligence firm concluded without a single data leak. The physical drone remains locked in a high-security containment facility at Scotland Yard, and its internal storage cards have been permanently wiped by the government's cyber defense unit. The foreign media groups have zero actionable imagery or internal floor plans to support their speculative broadcast segments. The architectural secrecy of the hidden room was preserved with absolute clinical precision. The quiet struggle over Queen Elizabeth's most valuable possessions has ended with a total administrative victory for the new guard. The physical items are safe, the financial pipelines are secure, and the legal walls protecting the late Queen's private choices are completely unbreakable. The transition of authority has been executed with clinical efficiency, leaving the traditional succession handbook fully updated for the modern era. The true history of the House of Windsor remains safely hidden behind the locked doors of the sovereign sanctuary. This historic vault proves that the royal family maintains a strict boundary between public duties and private history. The recent relocation of these priceless files to Catherine's secure office at Adelaide Cottage demonstrates that the new guard is fully prepared to execute this defensive strategy with absolute precision. The legal walls around the Windsor Castle private trust remain completely solid, permanently cutting off external media conglomerates or overseas legal teams from accessing the family's hidden historical records.